The Cascades of Central Oregon. Peaceful, lush, dramatic. A rising wall of volcanically enriched earth showing above what violence lies below. Though the land has fallen silent for thousands of years, the sound of a new struggle reverberates through these steep canyon walls. As the headwaters of the Willamette River effortlessly flow down, the struggle to lift heavy tons of lumber over the mountain is a newcomer to the scene. For the men who spread out a map and envisioned it, the last great Northwest Railroad route to be built, the payoff would come from truncating miles of challenging route mileage from their artery linking California to the Northwest. But for many, the payoff comes from the views and vistas, the waterfalls, tunnels, and bridges that have made this line legendary for the last 100 years. For me, the hill has been the main challenge in bringing trains south to Klamath Falls, so I finally got around to spending some of my free time off the rails with my camera next to them. And I hope to illustrate in some measure how the Union Pacific on a daily basis faces this head-on. Though we'll explore some of the changing technology and history, most of all, I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the view. The journey to the summit of any mountain starts at the bottom, and for us that's Oakridge, 48 miles southeast of Eugene.
583.5.
The train defect detector in Westford telegraphs the approach of a southbound. Like entering a stage, southbound freights emerge from Tunnel 22 into Oakridge, base camp if you will, for the 45-mile mountain assault ahead. This Portland to Roseville manifest pounding the north-siding frog illustrates the most common goods moving south. Steel coils, sheets, and bars, rolls of paper, and lots of lumber. There's about 100 tons of board lumber on each of those centerbeam flat cars, in addition to the weight of the car itself when empty, around 35 tons. And for good reason, since Oregon is the #1 softwood lumber producer in the nation. This MPDRV is the first of 2 daily Albina freights that are bound for Roseville Yard. The second one will be the MPDRVB, and they could be easy to confuse since by the time they reach here, the second crew district on the route, the RVB arrives in the morning while the RV arrives in the evening. Other daily scheduled freights include the MHKRV and the ZBRLC. For the Union Pacific in the Northwest, Albina is the hub of the wheel. In Portland, routes east, north, and south meet at Albina Yard under the watchful gaze of Oregon's highest mountain, Mount Hood. It's here at Albina Yard most trains over the Cascades begin their journey or pause for a crew change, as this HKRV is about to do. The Hinkle won't arrive in Eugene until dusk, where it will do work in the yard. Standing atop the hump of Eugene's old classification yard, it's a new day. The final car rolled into the bowl in the 90s, and the Southern Pacific Railroad itself rolled into the fold of Union Pacific in the 1996 mega merger. And now what was once Oregon's largest rail yard is now a shell of itself. In the 23 years I've been a conductor in Eugene, I've witnessed some improvements and setbacks, but the consistent story throughout has been contraction, fewer and fewer jobs, cars, and customers. And finally, in 2025, the final blow fell on what few switch jobs remained. The Union Pacific and Central Oregon and Pacific Railroads came to an agreement to hand all switching operations over to the Corp, who since the 90s has only been connected to Eugene Yard through interchange. In this summer 2024 view of the South Switcher remote job, the crew wasn't aware that the sun was setting on their time sorting cars here. Since early 2025, the main line is the last remaining pool for Union Pacific train crews, who now call Central Oregon and Pacific for instructions when they need to do work here. The old roundhouse has been under Corp control since the UP takeover, and their engines have been a regular sight for decades. Any maintenance to Union Pacific locomotives in that time has been done in the open air. Small repairs and maintenance was performed by mechanical personnel classified by their 08 call sign, but they too have been abolished and responsibilities merged with several carmen, now called TCI. This empty track houses Amtrak Cascades trains at the end of their day. The old Talgo sets, when retired, were newer than these old coaches, running out their remaining days on this service between Eugene and British Columbia. By contrast, new locomotives have been replacing the P40s and P42 sets. This Amtrak Coast Starlight number 14 has one of the Siemens new Tier 4 ALC-42s. Introduced in 2022, ALC-42 stands for Amtrak Long Distance Charger 4200 horsepower. Another major operational change came in 2023. The manned helper pool in Oakridge was abolished. This was perhaps the last holdout for this unique practice, which was replaced with the use of DPUs. The distributed power units today are placed in trains at Eugene by Central Oregon and Pacific switch crews, who use the engines to move cuts of cars for pickup. Mainline train crews will pick them up, usually after making setouts in the yard. It's 2023, and this train is departing south via the engine lead, a track which, along with the tank farm, runs around the outside of Eugene Yard for several miles. In a few days from now, the 6378, still bearing SP paint, will join Oakridge's helper pool as one of the last manned helper sets. Outside of town, Dexter Hill gets the prime movers warmed up for the climb ahead. Originally, the line followed the north bank of the Willamette River all the way to Oakridge. But this route over Dexter Hill was built in the 50s with the construction of Lookout Point Reservoir. About 10 miles of that roadbed was inundated by these waters between the new sidings of Minnow, Crail, and Hampton. In total, 22 miles of line was rerouted for the project. We're looking across the reservoir at a southbound PDRV approaching Hampton. The sound of breakers on the rocks rarely gets old, and is an indication of a healthy snowpack from last winter, as we see Amtrak 14 gliding through Crail. For a time, the southbound Z train ran here on a midday schedule. Today, the Z trains usually meet on the hill in the middle of the night. The first tunnel encountered on the route comes here, approaching Lookout Siding, back on the original mainline grade. At Westford, just across the ridge before Oakridge, the Willamette River splits, where we see this bridge crossing the North Fork of the Willamette River. As the Pacific Plate dives beneath the North American Plate, a continuous range creates a natural barrier between east and west. It also separates the lush Willamette Valley from a desirable flat high desert plateau in central Oregon. It was for this reason that the Oregon and California Railroad selected the western route over Siskiyou Pass to link California with Oregon. Over time, the drawbacks of the Siskiyou line became clear. Too many sharp curves and steep grades to handle the growing Northwest economy. The Pengra Pass route was a very real option from the start, with track layers jumping off from Natron in 1910 to build the line. But by 1912, tracks had only been laid to Oakridge, where progress would halt for 12 years. The line wouldn't see completion until 1926. So what happened in between? Edward Harriman desired the route discovered by B.J. Pengra from the start of his 1901 takeover of Southern Pacific. He slowly moved toward constructing the line for a decade until an antitrust suit against his lines was issued by the government. This forced him to separate the Union Pacific and Southern Pacific, both of which he owned. Investment into the Oregon Eastern Line ceased, as part of the financial incentive was to build a connection east with the Union Pacific and Ontario. Further attempts by the government to separate the Central Pacific and Southern Pacific systems failed in 1923, at which time Southern Pacific focused on closing the gap on a new route from Oakridge to the line pushing north at Kirk. In 1926, the Golden Spike was driven between Fraser and Cruzette. The new route lowered the ruling grade from 3.8% over Siskiyou Pass to 1.8% over the Cascade line. The new route was also 25 miles shorter distance between Eugene and Black Butte. Though in some ways not as extreme as other famous SP mountain grades, the Cascade line remains the longest continuous mountain grade on the current UP system. Unit grain trains comprise some of the most common non-daily scheduled traffic on the Cascade sub. In all cases, loaded hoppers are shipped south, then returned empty back to their connections with the Canadian Pacific or Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Here we see the sharp new corporate colors of CPKC adorning the leader. Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern merged December 14, 2021. The rear of the train will soon clear the 25 mile per hour permanent speed restriction and enter 45 mile per hour track along Lookout Point Reservoir. It's been about 50 miles since this train has observed track speeds of 45 miles per hour, and I can attest, this crew is ready to speed up.
Are you saying that horn is bad order there?
Yes.
And you're saying you need a control number to go over?
No, I'm just saying that, with the crossings being so close to each other, we have to be prepared to stop since we don't have a horn. So it's better if I run manual. Over.
Running leader or TO today, over?
It's leader. Over.
Engineer's employee ID number, please, over.
Leader. Over.
The Omaha Dispatch 268 7090. $70.90 all on the pole, thank you. And once you get this thing in, give dispatch or the corridor or someone back a call. There's lots of stuff to protect.
Today, a daylight Z train indicates delay, and this clear January day has a fresh dog catch crew retrieving trains off the mountain. What would normally be the fastest train a hill crew can get called for, on this night turned out to be a bucket, slang for a 12-hour shift. A bridge tie fire, frozen switches, and a UDE, undesired emergency, made sure to keep the UPS from arriving at Brooklyn Yard on time. And on top of all that, the horn quit working 44 miles into the trip.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make you aware, right? So when you get there, you'll need to have a conversation with that crew and then also talk with, I guess, dispatcher or whatever else. So this was reported at 2 o'clock this morning, and the engine was timed to be trail only. Do y'all not have another engine you could use the lead locomotive?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
rest of your triple.
The locomotives have two systems controlling and enforcing movement. PTC, or Positive Train Control, protects against overspeed and restrictive signals. That system works in concert with the newer EMS system, Energy Management System. When operative, it is expected that the engineer release control of the train over to EMS, which comes in one of two systems that actually run the train. The locomotive will be outfitted with either TO, Trip Optimizer, or Leader. OPC, the Operations Control Desk, which manages these systems, has been speaking to the engineer about getting permission to manually run the train. With the safety threat of an inoperative horn, rules dictate slowing down at road crossings. In order to better comply, it only makes sense for the hoghead to take control back from the system that won't recognize this restriction. Today, Oakridge siding is playing host to opposing trains. In a well-arranged meet, both trains fit between signals. However, the southbound PDRVB doesn't have much room to spare. It's typical practice for crews to allow the shorter train to clear rather than shoehorn a lengthy train between switches. Although EMS has surrendered control back to the engineer on this MRVHK, the Positive Train Control can still be a pain at times, especially when an experienced engineer is limited by a cautious system. The PTC is always monitoring the train, measuring the upcoming red signal against the speed and weight of the consist. On the engineer's computer screen, it will often give warnings with a countdown to a boundary it provides, and if air isn't set or slowdown not observed in time, the system will apply a penalty air brake application. PTC is almost always more cautious than an experienced engineer who knows how his train will respond to an air brake application. Some places on the mountain require frustratingly slow approaches to stop signals, which I'm sure would have driven old head engineers from SP days to an early retirement. As the engineers sort through the logistics, at times they must also deal with a practical joking conductor with nothing better to do.
Dave, how much more room you got there?
None.
How much more room you got there?
0.
I'll see if I can squeeze it up a couple more feet.
No, my timer ran out on me here. I have plenty of room. Yeah, I looked down, it was like 3, 2, 1.
Another example of a sensitive system which got down to a second away from a penalty application, which triggers an automatic download and attention nobody wants. Fortunately, a swing of the air brake handle avoided all that. As all 10,000 plus tons are now finally on over 1% grade, the mid-pack helpers notch up, evidenced by a plume of diesel exhaust. Next time you see two trains meeting, now maybe you'll appreciate a little bit more what the engineers are dealing with. The Oakridge Y was used daily during manned helper operations, which took place between 2019 and 2023. This set is headed off the north leg to attach to the rear of a southbound manifest. They will run down yard tracks to the north end of Oakridge to control point 582, which has a dispatcher-controlled OS that allows trains in and out of the yard tracks. The south yard switch is not dispatcher-controlled, but simply a hand-lined crossover switch. In front of the helpers sits snow fighting equipment, watching a sky haze now not with flakes of snow, but smoke and ash from forest fires. Part of the duties of the Oakridge Manned Helper Pool was to clear the pass in the winter. Now that the helper pool has been dissolved, these chores go to the Eugene extraboard crews when called upon. Here we see the first snow service call of the season, as the crew works to assemble and today jumpstart the locomotives. Today, the flanger crew will head to Crescent Lake, clearing the pass as they go. From winter back to summer, the 6378 joins the helpers as we celebrate a nod to the past with Southern Pacific paint, an increasingly rare sight. Sadly, it's only a matter of months before this operation will fade to memory. Just around the bend from Oakridge Yard, one of the delayed trains behind the Z we saw earlier arrives at Fish Hatchery Road crossing with a crew that should be able to make it, having 3.5 hours left to work. Staying in town the same day, a 12-hour late southbound Z train starts up the hill, passing clear signals at the intermediate approach to Pryor Siding. This is the second crew out of Eugene this stack train has had. The first one didn't turn a wheel, but finally wound up in a carryall to K Falls. The reason? The delayed ZLCTM at nearly 8,500 feet couldn't fit anywhere to meet this even longer 8,966-foot train. Crescent Lake, at 9,575 feet long, would have been the first place 100 miles into the trip. Recently, instead of running solid empty bare table intermodal trains, reposition moves have been added to the end of container trains. If it were my railroad, I would have cut these off in Eugene and run it shorter so as to fit for a meet somewhere. But it's not my railroad. On this incredibly mild January 21st day, we see the first train that followed our delayed Z. It's already been a 10-hour day for this RVPT, and they will likely need the patch crew to finish the trip. Roseville traffic headed for BNSF's Lake Yard in Portland are assembled on the RVPT like this. PT standing for Portland Terminal. Cars in Eugene are often added to these trains. Standard practice is for the inbound crew to do that work, while the Portland crew will bring it to interchange after crossing the steel bridge.
Oakridge to Oakridge, over.
Cars from the lake yard going south are integrated into the PDRV, so you will never see a train billed as the PTRV. At milepool 5719, an advance approach indicates a meet at McCredie Springs. Tunnel 21, the first bore encountered on the hill, is about to host the heaviest manifest train I've ever seen on the Cascade line. This monster has more lumber in one train than I've ever seen before. In the early 2000s, the tunnels were notched, as you can see here, to allow clearance for double-stack containers, which until about 2005 were not allowed. A unique geological structure overhangs the track just before Tunnel 21. For what feels like all time the most dependable train to be found on the hill midday, Amtrak number 14, bound for Seattle from Los Angeles. About a mile further down the line, a rare tangent stretch sees the grade reach its maximum of 1.8%, about 8 miles up the mountain. Also here, you'll notice evidence of a recent fire, which is a common occurrence on the south-facing slope of the Salt Creek Canyon. It's summer 2025, and a fire has shut down not only the trains, but the Highway 58 traffic as well. As firefighters get the flames under control, I'm deadheading to Cascade Summit on a southbound, as the highway remains closed. I've been called to retrieve a train tied down there for the last 24 hours. It's been decided to allow train traffic to resume, with a 10-mile-per-hour speed restriction through the area, sounding the horn for men fighting the fire. Pink fire retardant that's been dropped on the track in the area makes for a surreal scene. This fire is the catalyst for my latest addition to this video. We're looking today at the same burned hillside. The dead burned timber has been cleared in the early months of 2026, opening up some nice views just outside of Oakridge. The trees were felled and hauled away by helicopter. Looking at old footage of the hill, most areas had views like this, as the forest wasn't allowed to grow so thick and close to the right-of-way. I wish all the timber could be harvested from the railroad right-of-way just like this, and eliminate the tree tunnels. Emerging from just such thick growth, an MHKRV leaves the shadows to bask in the beautiful morning sun of a June day in the new clearing. This train is running several hours late, the crew having been called for 0130. They've just passed 6 hours on duty, and so long as they don't get held up for anything, we'll have just enough time to make it before reaching the 12-hour mark. Stella Jones Pole Treatment has 2 plants that are serviced by Portland and Western and forwarded to the UP. These are from Stella Jones' Eugene Pole Yard along Highway 99. Along with the removed trees, discarded ties are lying by the roadbed. These are the latest replacements from a major tie replacement job that's been ongoing for a year over the entire Cascade subdivision. Multiple gangs are working on various projects, trying to hold windows for traffic to keep clear. But this second day of June, dispatchers have had to keep maintainers in the clear for hours to allow tardy trains through. With the day half over, they've finally been given the time they need from the dispatcher. The northbound Coast Starlight will leave Klamath Falls shortly before 8 a.m., arriving in Eugene around 12:30. Shortly after a meet at Pryor, growling locomotives reverberate with the effort it takes to pull the heaviest train seen over the line, a unit grain train. This one received from the Canadian Pacific at Eastport Terminal. The conductor, obviously enthusiastic for a daylight run, offers his greetings from the front porch. Unfortunately, it seems that ever since the Union Pacific-Norfolk Southern merger announcement, the colorful consists on these grain trains have ended. The one chance to see foreign power on the hill in these grain trains, for now, seems to be over. This was the last train I ever chased with a manned helper mid-pack during summer 2023. I've made a video detailing the practice of putting in these helpers in the past. They would assemble both sets of helpers at Oakridge and run to Lookout where the grade is flat, then shove to the summit where they were cut out at the south switch. Today, for the sake of these 44 or so miles of mountain grade, UP runs these mid-packs, and rear helpers for that matter, the full 198 miles to Klamath. We'll get one more look at Salt Creek Trestle at Heather. Pacific Ocean moisture is captured by the steep Cascade uplift on the west slope, creating lush rainforests. Snow melts quietly but moves out noisily at Eagle Creek. Two and a half years after we saw Sister 6378 here, 6379 makes an appearance, looking wonderful in her original paint. McCredie Springs is one of the lengthier sidings on the hill, a dependable place for a meet, where the MRVHK we just saw has just arrived holding the main to meet the PDRV. The detector at milepole 5719 just gave this Roseville-bound train a strange tone, one unfamiliar to the crew, and they will be inquiring from the dispatcher whether the readout indicates their train has a defect or if the detector is simply malfunctioning. In this situation, the dispatcher can look at the readout of any detector and relay the conditions when needed. Thankfully, this time the train is good to go. For me, being a familiar face to the train crews, sometimes a little teasing is in order.
Cheese Man Highball.
Oh, highball from the cheese man. I didn't see anyone here at your spur, but unless you got somebody you're bringing.
Not this time.
The spur my friend refers to is the house track at McCredie Springs. And the friend he's referencing refers to a time last summer when on a southbound train I rounded the corner to see a young couple copulating on top of a water car which was set out there in order to put out fires. Thankfully, the heat they were generating didn't require a dousing from the water car. And as far as the Cheese Man nickname for me, that's just an inside joke between the two of us. On the hill, it really doesn't matter who goes end the siding and who stays on the main during meets, since the track speed down the hill is 25 miles per hour, and trains going up the hill rarely reach that mark. We'll hear the strange tone from the 5719 detector shortly. Normally, these talking detectors simply announce their milepost when passed by a train. There's always something to keep you on your toes when you go to work on the Union Pacific. That concludes part number 1. We've barely scratched the surface. Thanks for sticking with me. See you in part 2. God bless, friends.